My roommate ghosted me over an email after I laid my heart bare in a letter. You've stopped following expectations, she said, while never taking accountability for her emotional manipulation. Now I'm left wondering where my friendship went. I am unsure how to begin this. I am emotionally and physically exhausted from this entire situation. I am a 24-year-old female living with my roommate, whom I will refer to as B, a 22-year-old female for almost 2 years. We met during our final year of college when we shared the same major and took many classes together. We quickly became friends due to our shared interests. After graduating, we decided to move in together. I genuinely believed there was a strong connection between us. We bonded rapidly and I felt safe and supported by her. She confided in me about her difficult relationship with her family, particularly her mother, whom she often described as manipulative or codependent. I felt that we were deepening our friendship. A few months after moving in together, she adopted a 4-year-old Shih Tzu named Pebbles from a local shelter. 2 months later, I acquired a 9-week-old miniature golden doodle named Oakley. I had been eager to get a dog for years and had already planned to do so long before she decided to get her dog. I assumed we were both aligned on everything, and I spent an entire month off work training and bonding with my dog to ensure he would integrate well into our dynamic. About a year into our shared living situation, I began to notice some red flags. She rarely took the initiative or expressed appreciation, nor did she invest in our friendship. Whenever there was tension, I was the one who had to break the ice, resolve conflicts, or apologize even when I was not at fault. If I tried to discuss something that was bothering me, she would become defensive, act cold, or make passive-aggressive remarks. She would then twist the conversation to make me feel guilty for even bringing it up. On the rare occasions when she hurt my feelings, she did not take responsibility unless I pointed it out, and even then her apologies felt superficial. Her behavior was emotionally immature. Instead of communicating like an adult, she would sulk or avoid me. When I shared my struggles, she would redirect the conversation back to herself or act irritated. Occasionally, B would make jokes at my expense or criticize me in ways that felt too pointed, and would then claim she was just joking when I brought it to her attention. After typing this all out, I am surprised it took me so long to realize how toxic she is. Tension has existed between us for the past few months, and I am uncertain about its origin. Then, about 2 weeks ago, everything escalated dramatically. We had been dealing with an ongoing roach infestation in our apartment for months. That day, we spent hours on the phone with the apartment complex trying to address the most recent treatment. We were both exhausted. I could tell she was in a bad mood, so I decided to give her space. She went across the street and brought home some sushi for herself. She sat down on the couch and my dog, out of curiosity, jumped up to investigate what she had. Now, keep in mind that B is the one who frequently gives both dogs treats. She provides them with various human foods, causing them to beg from her. She even feeds them from her plate while sitting on the couch. I had my back to them when I heard some commotion. I turned around and saw her shoving my dog away, causing him to fall to the floor. I said hey and started walking over to remove my dog from the situation. She jumped up, huffed, and stormed into her room, slamming the door. I did not hear from her for the rest of the night. As a result, she gave me the silent treatment for the following week. During that week of silence, I decided it was time to address how she had been treating me. I have autism, so conflict resolution is not my strong suit. I determined that the best way for me to communicate this would be to write her a letter. The letter was quite lengthy, about a page long, so I will summarize its contents. In the letter, I conveyed my feelings that the dynamics between us had become emotionally difficult, leaving me feeling anxious, hurt, and as if I were constantly walking on eggshells in my own home. I acknowledged her bluntness, which I typically appreciate, but explained that it could sometimes feel unnecessarily harsh and isolating. I reflected on my tendency to avoid conflict and noted that I had allowed issues to slide at the expense of my well-being, and I committed to working on this. I also expressed how important my dog is to me as a source of emotional support and how it hurts when he becomes a point of tension. I acknowledged that having 2 dogs in the apartment can be challenging and committed to putting in more effort to ensure I maintain his training. My dog is not problematic. He is a young dog brimming with energy. This is my first experience as a dog owner, so I am still learning the ropes. If anything, there are behaviors exhibited by both of our dogs that irritate one another. I understand that dogs will engage in certain behaviors simply because they are dogs. B seems to expect that my young puppy should be flawless and not make any mistakes. I concluded the letter by stating that I was trying to communicate my feelings honestly and not to provoke an argument. Because I valued our friendship, I wanted to work towards a more respectful, balanced, and supportive relationship. I spent several hours over 2 days drafting, writing, rewriting, and editing this letter to ensure I was being respectful while also kindly expressing my feelings. After feeling that I had articulated myself properly, I planned to give her the letter. Early Friday morning, I prepared for work, and as I was leaving, placed the letter on her side of the table. I assumed she had read the letter because a few hours later, I received a text that said, "I will be writing you an email since you have expressed that written communication is best for you to process things." I was uncertain how to interpret her tone, but hopeful that this would lead to a constructive conversation. I was unprepared for what transpired next. That evening, I returned from work to an empty apartment. B, her dog, and the dog crate were gone. I am unsure where she went but assumed she was staying with a friend to have some space, which is understandable. Later that evening, I received her email. It stated, "Thank you for expressing your thoughts and concerns. I appreciate your honesty. I understand the dog is important for your emotional well-being. However, he affects me emotionally and financially. For instance, he has taken my food off the kitchen table or attempted to eat off my plate. I have established expectations and standards for our living arrangement multiple times this year, and you have agreed to these expectations. However, after a few weeks, you cease to adhere to them, which frustrates me. I feel that we are growing and moving in different directions in life. Therefore, I do not believe that continuing to live together will be beneficial for either of us. If this makes you uncomfortable and you would prefer to break the lease, I am willing to accommodate this and stay with my mother until I find a new living situation." Upon reading her message, a wave of emotions swept over me, ranging from anger to sadness. I never suggested anything about breaking the lease or not living together. All I wanted was a simple conversation to address the issues I felt were undermining our relationship. She could not even extend the decency of an apology for her actions. I called my sister, who came over and stayed with me for an hour while I cried and vented. I was genuinely heartbroken. This was someone I believed would be a lifelong friend, someone I had confided in and shared my thoughts with. Her response amounted to a breakup of our friendship, filled with passive language and deflection. Not only did she not take any real responsibility, but she also framed the issue around my dog, failing to recognize that the problem extended beyond the incident last week. It involved the unraveling of our friendship. That night, I went to bed feeling utterly exhausted. Saturday morning, I woke up and went to work. Upon returning home, I decided to take my dog for a walk to help him release some energy and avoid causing any trouble. This would also allow me to be in nature and process everything. Once I reached the park, I received a demanding text from her stating, "We need to have a conversation tonight when you're back from your walk." This triggered all the initial emotions to resurface. Why did she feel entitled to demand that I speak with her now that she believed there was something worth discussing? I responded with, "Based on your limited response to my letter, which focused on the dog and your standards and expectations, I am unsure what you expect to discuss. I am hurt and angry about how you have handled this. I do not know when I will return home, but I will inform you if and when I am ready to talk, as I am not prepared for a conversation tonight." I went to my parents' house and did not return until late that night after B had gone to bed. When I came home on Sunday, she had hung a curtain to separate her room and bathroom from the main living and dining area. I am unsure if this is typical or if she is simply being petty. It is now Tuesday as I write this, and I feel as though the past few days have lasted for months. My family and some close friends have commented that she is very toxic and even emotionally manipulative. I am unsure of what to think anymore. I feel as though I cannot trust my own thoughts or what I believe to be true. I am also uncertain about how to move forward from this. I am angry that she has continually twisted everything to focus on my shortcomings and my dog's behavior, rather than addressing the real emotional pain she has caused me. I am also heartbroken that someone I thought was a genuine friend could discard me so easily. Where do I go from here? Summary: I am a 24-year-old female who has lived with my roommate B, a 22-year-old female, for nearly 2 years. We were close friends, but her behavior became distant, passive-aggressive, and dismissive. After a recent incident, I wrote her a letter expressing my feelings and my desire to improve our relationship. She responded with an emotionally detached email suggesting that we no longer live together and effectively ended our friendship. I am heartbroken and confused. What steps should I take next? Story 2. Mother-in-law exploded over dog training, claiming I was disrespectful and tearing the family apart. After leaving in tears, she sent a half-hearted letter of regret. Now she thinks I'm the villain. Can I confront her without igniting another war? This is a lengthy post. I apologize for that. I truly seek advice and felt it was important for you to have all the details. In the following, I want to bring you closer to the following topics: the events that led to my being hurt, the background and reasons this may have occurred, my feelings about the situation, and how to move forward. The events. My mother-in-law disagreed with how I trained my dog and did not discuss it with me until her disagreement had escalated into anger. I did not notice anything amiss but brought up the subject at Christmas. She then started asking passive-aggressive questions. I responded to her inquiries very calmly. She has never owned a dog. In contrast, I have actively learned about dog training for many years and wanted to share my knowledge so she could understand my methods. Throughout the entire conversation, she rolled her eyes at me and clearly expressed through her body language that she believed I was talking nonsense. I interrupted myself mid-sentence and calmly expressed that I was uncomfortable with how the conversation was progressing and that I felt she was not listening. In response, she began to shout at me loudly, claiming that she had enough of me and that I was treating her disrespectfully. I was very confused about whether I had done anything wrong, but others at the table quickly stated that I handled everything well. However, I felt overwhelmed and had to retreat to my partner's room. She continued to shout next door for an hour, speaking negatively about me and claiming that this situation was unacceptable. A few hours later, I approached her to let her know that I would like to talk the following morning over breakfast. She responded in a whiny manner, recounting how much I had hurt her and expressing uncertainty about whether she could forgive me. I did not reply but merely nodded. The next morning, I approached her once more, asking if she was ready to talk. She stated that she did not believe there was anything to discuss. She continued to accuse me of tearing her family apart, ruining the weekend for everyone, and driving her children away, holding me responsible for all her negative feelings, and those feelings were quite intense. I became extremely angry. I had not felt such rage in a long time, and it felt as though my head might burst. I am usually someone who speaks up, but my partner, 32 years old, been together for 5 years, and his brothers, 36 years old and 25 years old, advised me against doing so at that moment as they did not think she would be open to logic. Thus, I remained silent, but I began to cry. Feeling overwhelmed, I locked myself in my partner's room and experienced a massive, violent meltdown. Apparently, she shouted for me to quiet down, and my partner told her that her behavior was not acceptable, which was a significant moment for him, as he typically just shuts down. I have never witnessed him looking as hurt as he did after this. He packed our bags and we, along with his brothers, left. Afterward, I wrote a lengthy letter that I never sent. We have had no contact since. A few days ago, I received a brief letter from her stating that she was sorry things escalated during Christmas and that she was just very hurt and angry with me. I do not view this as an apology. I am fairly certain she expects me to express my own regret as well and hopes we will never discuss the matter again. The background. Her family has a long-standing history of avoiding conflict. They do not discuss issues they dislike. Everything must remain friendly and polite. From their perspective, negative emotions are seen as harmful and need to be suppressed. Her children are in the process of unlearning this behavior. They have been suffering for a long time, and her outburst seems to have triggered some change within them. Conversely, she never learned what healthy conflict looks like. Her lashing out and then portraying herself as the victim closely mirrors what her mother did to her. This dynamic is the reason she harbors resentment toward her mother and believes she is now justified in standing up for herself. She has confided in one of her sons, who is not particularly stable himself, 25 years old, for quite some time. She is in a difficult emotional place and has told him that the conflict with her children, his transition, her chronic pain, and other factors have affected her so profoundly that she has considered suicide. Her husband, who is a psychiatrist, 70 years old, has been helping her as best he can, but he does not seem to worry too much about her actual suicidal thoughts. How I feel. I am uncertain about what I need specifically, but one thing I do know is that I cannot feel comfortable around her while she remains convinced that my behavior was inappropriate. My ability to manage conflict calmly and engage in open conversations is something I appreciate about myself. I have masked my feelings considerably when visiting them, and I do not wish to suppress myself further. It feels unjust. I am not even sure I could do so. I am already struggling to keep up with social norms, and if more rules are introduced, rules I not only do not comprehend, but also disagree with, it's only a matter of time before I make another mistake. I cannot feel secure knowing that the consequences of my errors may be so severe. What I am uncertain about is whether I need her to recognize that her response was inappropriate. I do not believe her outburst had anything to do with me personally. It seems that my directness and emotional openness may have triggered something that was already building up. Her children feel that it is time to break the family pattern, but they are somewhat convinced she is too old to learn and will not respond to reason. It may not be my place to intervene, and if I try, I could make things worse for myself. Nevertheless, regardless of the reasons, she still erupted at me and caused me pain. I do not feel comfortable acting as if this situation is insignificant. Additionally, I must express that in the process she has somewhat lost my respect, and I do not know how this will affect my future behavior around her. I am not one to hold grudges, and I do recognize that her emotions are genuine and that she is not acting out of malice. However, she is also a mature woman, and she should possess enough self-awareness to be held accountable for her harmful actions. If I wish to be around her, we must revisit the topic of dog training. Otherwise, it will resurface or become a source of further frustration for her. How to proceed? There is so much I could and would like to say, but I am unsure what would be beneficial for the situation. I want to find a balance between being understanding and open while remaining fair and true to myself. I have no idea how to convey to her that I may not have exhibited questionable behavior, but rather that she did. I also want to express this without triggering her again. Moreover, I am uncertain about the best medium through which to conduct this conversation. Writing is much easier for me. I easily become overwhelmed during discussions and struggle to process information quickly enough to respond appropriately. On the other hand, she might feel overwhelmed by the content of my letter, interpret it through her own lens, and choose not to reply. My preferred options would be for her to read the letter with her therapist or for us to speak in the presence of a neutral third party. However, I am unsure of how to encourage her to do this. As a last resort, I hope for advice on how to approach this situation. Thank you. Summary: my mother-in-law communicated her anger toward me in a passive-aggressive manner. When I calmly acknowledged the situation, she shouted at me. I have attempted to engage her in conversation, but she accuses me of being responsible for many negative emotions she is experiencing. I feel uncomfortable being around her when I do not comprehend or agree with the social expectations she seems to have imposed. I am seeking advice on how to address this matter without triggering her again.